The last two problems on this lesson on disjoint events deal with making a chart with two number cubes. However, typically we add the two numbers together, but we're doing something interesting here. We're taking the numbers and subtracting them. However, we're not getting negative numbers because we always end up subtracting the smaller from the larger cube, and that's what the directions ask us here. And so what we're talking about is disjoint events in this lesson. And you've got to remember that disjoint events, disjoint, when you look at that word, that means not together. The two things cannot be the same thing. The two events can't equal. They can't be the same thing. They can't have something in common. They have to be totally separate in order to do this, because what we're going to end up doing is we're going to be adding fractions together. We're going to make the probability a lot bigger when we do this, because we're, instead of just multiplying numbers, which when we multiply fractions we make things smaller, we're going to be adding fractions, which makes it bigger. And so the probability is going to really increase, so we have to be really careful when we use this to make sure that we're using disjoint events, things that are not the same thing. So let's take a look at the first thing. It asks us to complete the grid to show the sample space. So sample space is just what the different values are. And so we'll go ahead and do that here. So again, we're just taking the number 3 and subtracting 1, and we end up with 2. 4 minus 1 makes 3. 5 minus 1 is 4. 6 minus 1 is 5. Moving on to the next one. 3 minus 2 is 1. 4 and 2 make 2. And hopefully you see the pattern here. The next one should be 3 and the next one should be 4. Let's see. 5 minus 2 is 3. 6 minus 2 is 4. Yes, it works. All right, we do the next one here. 3 minus 3 makes 0. 4 minus 3 makes 1. 5 and 3 make 2. And then 6 and 3 make 3. So over here we have 4 minus 3 makes 1. And then we have a 0. And then 5 minus 4 makes 1. And then 6 minus 4 makes 2. Well, we move on to the next. 5 and 3 make 2 when we subtract. And then we have 1, 0. And then over here we have 6 minus 5 makes the 1. Over here we should have a 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's see if that is right. We'll start with this one here. 6 minus 3 is 3. 6 minus 4 is 2. 6 minus 5 is 1. And yes, 6 minus 6 is 0. So it does end up working out. You can see the pattern that's developed. Well, here they're saying find the probability that the difference of the numbers shown on the number cube is 0 or 5. Now, when you see the word or right there, that tells us that typically they're talking about adding probabilities together. But we can't add the probabilities unless we have disjoint. So we must have disjoint events. And again, disjoint means not together. Disjoint events means they cannot be the same thing. They cannot have something in common. Like, remember the 2 and the prime numbers? An even number and a prime number, those do have something in common. 2 is a prime number and it's even. So we couldn't add those two events together. So here we can, because here we're looking for the probability of either a 0 or the probability of a 5. A 0 is not a 5. A 5 is not a 0. So these are disjoint events. So we will be able to add them together. So in this case, yes, we can add these numbers together. So let's figure out what those probabilities are. We have to count up how many successes there are, how many zeros there are, how many ways will the event of 0 occur. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 different ways. 6 out of how many? Well, we multiply. 6 times 6 makes 36. It works. Okay, plus, and then we do the same thing here. We count up how many 5s we have. We have 1, 2 5s. So there's 2 out of 36. Add those numbers together, we get 836. And that's our number. So from there, what we can do is we could take out that common factor. We could divide by 4, and we'll have our number eventually here. So 2/9, that's the probability. So having a disjoint event makes the probability go up because we're having to add the two probabilities together. And a key word to look for when we're dealing with disjoint events is or. But just because it says or, we also have to make sure it's really a disjoint event or not. And disjoint means not together, so the two events cannot have something in common. So those are the types of problems you'll see on tonight's homework. Good luck.